we don't put people to death in the United Kingdom, but I think it's a constant debate. You know, we come here and we think about the numbers of people that you guys were involved in that execution process. And what can you take us through that time? What was the timing on the day?
Well, the inmate usually got there in the early afternoon.
And then the execution is set for 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock.
And then what do they do in between that? Do they?
They spend most of the afternoon with the chaplain. They get their last meal, and that's their afternoon.
Part of the mythology, I suppose, of this is that practice of the last meal. Was there any limit on what they could order, what they could have for that meal?
Well, to the extent that a guy could order anything that was available in the prison system. If he came in and ordered, say, 3 cheeseburgers and some fries, well, we fixed it up and carried it to him.
Yeah.
And does the last meal, does that still exist?
Not anymore. That stopped when there was an offender who ordered quite a bit of food, everything you can think of, fried chicken, hamburgers, tacos, lasagna, anything you can think of, he ordered. And when he got there, he was car sick and didn't eat anything on the table. So
That changed it for everybody.
yeah.
For the inmates, with the final meal finished, it was then time for the execution.
At 6 o'clock, I'd walked up to him and I'd call him by his last name and say, it's time to go with me to the next room. And one of these guys would unlock the cell and I'd say, follow me. I would turn around and say, get up on the gurney. Then there was 2 medical people in there and they would start putting the IVs in one arm.
So you're there all the time talking?
Oh yeah, trying to keep his mind off what's going on over here.
Okay.
And some of these guys would be escorting the witnesses in. And then my boss would step out of the room and say, Warden, you can proceed with the execution. And I'd tell the inmate, so-and-so, you can make your statement. The signal to the executioner that it's time for him to do his job was we removed our glasses. And he'd start the fluids to flow in, and usually within 30, 45 seconds, this guy would take his last breath.
Listening to you describe it, it sounds quite procedural, but
Mechanical.
yeah, you all realised the significance of what you were doing.
Yes.
Yeah, it's hard to see when you go back in to unstrap them. Most of them still have their eyes open, and it was always hard for me to look at.
Yes.
If you could have your time over again, would you do anything differently?
I think I would have liked to have sat down with the inmates and ate a little bit with them at their last meal.
If I was asked to be on the tie-down team again, I feel like I would do it. I mean, because it's carrying out a law that's set by the state, and that's who I work for.
And what can I ask you why you still feel so strongly for it?
My faith has a lot to do with it. I was shown this Bible verse that was Romans 13:4. It says, for he is God's servant to do you good. But if you do wrong, you should be afraid, for he does not bear the sword for anything. He is God's servant, an agent of wrath to bring punishment on the wrongdoer. And I'm reading this thinking, well, this is me.
It was interesting that they all mentioned their faith straight away as their justification for why they believe it is still the right thing to do. And that's given me quite a bit to think about because, you know, I'm a Christian. I follow the same God that they were talking about in there. And yet for me, I look at the mercy and the compassion in the teachings of Jesus Christ. So while I'm not perhaps on the same page as them, I hugely respect them for, one, being honest with us, but also when you consider the job that they have done and what they have seen.